Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pathway to Leadership. I am so glad you are here. I'm glad that you're here watching the live feed, and if you're here on the replay, I'm glad you're here too. So don't forget, the best way that you can show your support is just below this video. Hit that like button, that thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so that you can be part of the conversation. So tonight's episode, if you want to call it that, is all about the secrets of effective communication. So let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and switch the slides over because I've got something prepared for you. Well, let's see. Does that work? Are we hearing me now? Why is it that I always have problem with audio? You just missed some seriously awesome opening dialogue. Oh my goodness. That was really good. Let me see if I can get my other screen to work appropriately also. Let's see. Hopefully this screen is going good. Oh, so, all right. So, one of the caveats to Pathway to Leadership is you never know if you're going to hear what I'm saying. But, wow. I apologize so much for that. Let's get back over to here. All right. How are we doing? As far as I can tell, everything is working fine. So, all right. I guess we're going to back up. Take two. Welcome to Pathway to Leadership. Everything I needed to know was muted. Thank you, Elliot. Yeah, I get your support there, buddy. It's not easy. You know, so one of the things I always say with Pathway to Leadership, your foundation is to learn and teach. So, well, and the other thing is get out of your comfort zone. Just get out there and do it. And, well, I'm getting out there and doing it, and I'm learning, and I'm going to teach. Right now, I'm going to teach. The thing is, make sure you have audio. And we'll get into that. And I think you'll all laugh. One of the other slides that I'll be bringing up later on in the broadcast is that's going to make this make a lot more sense. But so here we are. Welcome to Pathway to Leadership. Show us some love. Give us a thumbs up. Ignore everything that happened before this point, and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe so that you can be part of the conversation. And we're going to get right into it. So, communication habits that we need to avoid. First is multitasking. There's nothing worse than being in a conversation with someone that you feel is important and they're distracted by the phone going off, emails, reaching for their pocket, shutting off the notifications and things like that. So, let's try to make it a good habit that we don't do that. When someone is actually sitting down and having a conversation with us, let's make sure as leaders we make that conversation the most important thing at that moment. We're not going to be distracted by that phone going off, looking to see. Let's go back a few years. I mean, I'm a little bit older, and I think people joining us will be a little bit older. There was a day where the only way that we communicated with each other is if we decided to pull off the side of the road and actually make a phone call and check in. How did we survive? Today, with instant communication, we feel obligated that we have to communicate back right away, and vice versa. That we communicate with someone, we feel that because of today's technology that we expect them to communicate back right away. Well, it's actually frustrating because if you think about it, the technology of today has put us in a situation where we actually come out of the moment that we're in and only focus on that because that's the most important thing. I don't know where it comes from, and that's probably a video for another day, but I find it frustrating. And you might call me old school, but how did we survive all of these years without instant communication? So I think what I'm barreling it down to is that it's okay to allow someone to wait just a few minutes so that we can concentrate on the moment at hand and the communications that we're having with somebody, that we don't have to stop that conversation and communicate with someone through technology just because they communicated with us. Those interruptions, again, I'm going to say it, it's rude. It's not good manners. And just as a personal point of view, when I'm talking to you and your phone goes off and your phone becomes more important than what I'm communicating to you face to face, that is considered extremely rude. So, multitasking, meaning that, hey, I hear what you're saying, don't worry about me, I'm just checking this real quick and stuff like that. Believe me, multitasking, and you can Google this, you can go on YouTube and look at the studies also. It has been proven that multitasking is ineffective. You are at your best when you focus at the task at hand. And again, that's a video for another time, but when you're having communications, please don't be rude. Focus on the task at hand. The next bad habit that a lot of us fall into is providing solutions too soon, before the other person even has a chance to finish explaining what they're talking about. We're already in there saying, hey, I got it, and this is how we're going to solve it. Cutting someone off before they had a chance to either vent or at least give you all of the details is a bad habit when it comes to communication. One of the things I like to teach is sometimes we have to remember that the people that are coming to us and talking to us are not great communicators. They don't have the experience or the skills. We have to sometimes help them through the process on how to communicate. And when we think we've got all the details and we cut them off and all of a sudden start providing them solutions, we're actually making the situation worse. Think about it. Allowing the other person the time needed to express everything that they need to express is sometimes more important than the solution itself. Another way to look at it is after a while, they start hearing themselves talk, and they might solve some of this themselves just by having that dialogue with you. Just by having that dialogue with you. It's an interesting concept. One of the other bad habits that we all happen to get into is avoiding negative conversations. When we avoid a negative conversation, first of all, it's human nature. We want to be in a great place. We want to have a positive day and want to move forward with no obstructions. I mean, I don't think anybody ever wakes up and says, I can't wait to have that negative conversation with so-and-so. If so, well, obviously you're not a leader. But when you are faced with having to have those conversations, if you avoid them or procrastinate them, then you're allowing something to grow bigger. In the video that I posted for this week, I used an analogy. What if someone shows up to work late every day and you procrastinate and allow it to happen and you don't address it? And several weeks go by and you never say anything about it because you don't want to have that negative conversation. Well, what do you think happens? What actually happens, that individual starts to think, well, I haven't been corrected on it. Nobody told me it's a bad thing. So obviously it's acceptable. And now they keep coming in late. It's okay. My boss never said anything. It must be okay. So think about how monumentous this is when you actually have to address it and say, look, over the last 6 months, you've been coming in late every day, and now I have to correct this. If you took the time and didn't procrastinate at the beginning and took on that tough conversation right when it began, it would have been a lot easier than 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever it is, down the road, and now you have to correct a bad habit. Or, for instance, when you have to have a sit down face-to-face about a person's performance, and you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off. Well, if no one corrects the person, how are you expecting them to change direction? So that is avoiding negative communication. It's a tough one. So here we're going to pause again. Remember, it's really easy. Right down below this video, please hit the subscribe button. give me a thumbs up. That's the way you support this community. If you're watching this video and you got to this point, you're part of the community. You're part of Pathway to Leadership. So please help out the program by liking and subscribing. So now we can switch gears. We can look at habits that improve communication. So give me a second here. I want to back up and I want to look at some of the chat that we've got here. I'm going to go past the part where it says I can't hear you. Hopefully that's going. Elliot, you're saying this was just an example of fail forward. I didn't say fall. Fail forward. I like how you gave us the demo. Okay, great. All smiles. Keep driving. Hi, Mike. Welcome to Pathway to Leadership. I'm glad to see you here. Jamie. Bam. Love it. Don't know where that's going, but hey, you're chiming in. Let's keep the dialogue going. So the only way we're going to grow is if you like, share, and promote Pathway to Leadership. Elliot, what you're saying is asking key questions is sometimes better than giving an answer. Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we're going to come up to that right now, because if you see the slide on your screen right now, it's habits that improve communication. So first thing I want to bring up, feelings are real. Whether or not the leader understands the legitimacy behind the feeling. Here's the scenario. Someone approaches me and they say, you know what, John, this is really upsetting me. And in the back of my head is, why? That shouldn't upset you. You're thinking about this all wrong. No, don't think that way. Think about it this way. When we do that, we illegitimize their feelings. That is a negative to the person that's approaching you. What's really important is the fact that we legitimize the feelings, because feelings are real. Whether it's founded or not, the fact is something happened that gave this person a feeling, and this feeling was strong enough for them to approach you and to start a dialogue and a communication. Have to be careful as a leader to make sure that we don't dismiss feelings. Feelings are real, and feelings are what motivates people to do things. More than anything. I wish I was First Officer Spock on the Enterprise and go, I'm not driven by emotion, I'm only driven by facts, science, and, reason. That's not realistic. We are creatures of feelings, and when we're approached with a conversation and a communication that's driven by feeling, we have to legitimize that. Whether it's appropriate or not, we have to understand as leaders that that's real. Feelings are real. And that's the driving force behind communications. How we work with that is question. So the next point is question often. When someone comes to you with a communication, how we show that we're engaged and how we show that we're focused on what they're saying is we have to ask questions. Never assume that you've got the entire picture. I'm going to say it again. Never assume you have the entire picture. The importance behind that is when you start to question and ask for more information, you start to discover more things about what the communication is about. Whether it be a grievance or whether it be, well, let's just say there could be all kinds of communications, whether it be something like, I want to praise this individual. Well, why? Why do you want to praise this individual? What did they do? Tell me specifically. Ask the appropriate questions that shows that you are engaged. But there's another caveat to that. What you're also doing is you're teaching that person how to communicate to you. Does that make sense? Throw it in the chat. Does it make sense when you question, you're actually teaching someone how to communicate to you? Because when you teach someone how to communicate to you, the next time they approach you with a dialogue, they'll already know certain things that you're going to question, and they might actually have a good idea. Hey, when I go to so and so and approach them about a situation or something, this is the way I need to dialogue with them, and it becomes a better communication at that point. Let me know in the chat. Give me some thumbs up in the chats or some emojis in the chat if you feel that that's really important. All right. Try to understand. Try to understand where the individual is coming from. So, as a parent, sometimes my children will come to me and they'll have a dialogue with me. And, obviously there's an age gap, generational gap. And I have to at many times say, where is this coming from? Why is this dialogue happening? How should I approach this? How will I communicate and be at the same level? So, another habit that we all have to start to learn is put ourselves in the other person's shoes and try to discover, how did this communication begin? What drove the person to have this communication? What's their motivation? And what would be the positive outcome? So, discovering those things are extremely important, and it's hard to do because we all love to run our mouths. It's so easy. Someone comes and talks to you, and you're just going to have this dialogue, and you're just going to, unpracticed things are going to come out. You ever regret something that came out of your mouth and be like, whoa, wait, I didn't mean that? Well, that's where that comes from, is because we're not understanding, where is this communication coming from? How did it develop? Why is it here? And what's the positive outcome that we can make at the end of this dialogue? So sometimes it's good to just sit back and think, asking questions, clarifying, and understanding where it's all coming from and where it began. And we can dialogue about that later, because it's a communication live stream. Let's go to the next one. Be a chameleon. So, if you walk into someone's office and that person is talking to you in a very high energetic way and is really focused and pointed, the only way that you're going to be able to communicate to that person effectively is to become a chameleon. You're going to want to mirror that conversation. And I'm not talking about being a yes man. I'm talking about, if they're speaking in a fast cantor, you'd want to chameleon that. If they're in a high enthusiastic mood, you want to chameleon that. Okay? If they're laid back and kind of relaxed, you want to mirror that dialect and communication, because it'll be more receptive to them. And when you do that, you'll find you'll get a better response from the person that you're talking with. Now, there's a caveat to that, and that was in the video that I posted. And I have to be very careful about this, because now we're going into psychology. If you have somebody that's approaching you as a leader and they're full of anxiety and oh my God, all of the world is falling apart, and oh please, I need this, that. You need to approach it in an opposite position. You're going to approach it with calmness, slowness, and clarity. But in everyday conversation, when you're trying to get points across in a non-frictional manner, you'd want to be a chameleon. You want to mirror the person that you're talking to. But when it's an issue, and I believe Scott Dennis, you're in here, and Scott Dennis is prior law enforcement. I think Scott would have some pointers, and hopefully I can get Scott live with us one of these live streams. But when it comes to de-escalation, there's a whole process about that. When you need to take someone who's way up here, overreacting, just completely out of control, and you want to de-escalate them, you have to actually act opposite of how they're communicating, and there's a whole art process behind that. So that's being a chameleon. So the next thing I want to touch on is being present and in the moment. This is so hard to do sometimes. When we're approached and it's not on our agenda and it's completely off basis, is probably something that we were never even thinking of. Something that, we're concentrating on this over here. And then all of a sudden, we're hit with a subject that is completely off of our radar. A great habit to have is take a deep breath, clear your mind, and be present in that moment with the person that's talking with you. Try to understand, try to get all of the facts, do everything that we talked about. Feelings are real, question often, try to understand, everything like that. But being present in that moment is so critical, because you are focused in a completely opposite direction or somewhere completely different in the organization, and now you're faced with something that, wow, I have to switch gears. This is, I really don't want to do, and believe me, there's many times, you get in a situation where you're like, oh, I wasn't prepared to deal with this right now. Well, that's, as leaders, we have to learn to be present in the moment. And I'm not saying it's easy, but these are skills that are learned. This is why it's really important that we teach and learn and teach. So, again, going back, we have to teach people how to communicate also. Here's a slide that we really need to look into. Follow up and follow through. I think you know what? Let me take a little iced tea here. I need to really explain this because this is really important. Just because the conversation has ended with you doesn't mean the situation is always solved with the individual that came to you with a dialogue. When someone comes to you and expresses concern, a problem, or a situation that needs a resolution, as leaders, we are committed, and that's what it says right there. Follow up and follow through. Don't ever let that person sit there without a resolution. Excuse me. Never procrastinate on the follow-up and follow-through. If you've been approached with a complaint or a question or a concern, the longer you wait to get back to that individual, the more the individual feels they are illegitimate. Think about that. Illegitimate, not the problem. Not the problem that they brought to you. They're not thinking that the problem is illegitimate. They think themselves themselves personally. Remember, feelings are real. And if you ignore that situation, if you don't follow up, if you don't give them an update, they feel personally that they are illegitimate. They're not, worthy enough of your focus. And this is where and how a lot of people leave organizations, is because they don't feel that they're important enough to their leadership. When you procrastinate and you don't follow through with any kind of a communication that's come to you, you're actually setting that person up to leave the company. So think about that. As leaders, it's powerful. It's powerful. If you don't have a solution to the situation, there's nothing wrong with a follow-up, I haven't forgotten you. Boom, mind blow. Hey, you know what? Mary, I haven't forgotten about what you came and talked to me about. I haven't forgotten about it. I don't have a solution, and I will follow up with you as soon as I do. If it takes longer, Mary, trust me, haven't forgotten about you. I will follow up. I'm working on this. I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you. This is important to me. That's where a lot of leaders actually drop the ball, is they do not follow up and they do not follow through. I will guarantee you that 90% of the conversations, negative conversations, that come to a leader are not solved in that conversation. They always need follow-up and follow-through. And throw it in the chat if you think I'm wrong. And throw in the chat, anything that you think that goes with that. But follow up and follow through is very important. Leaders need to understand how people feel when they're not given the opportunity for closure. Don't leave it hanging. When you leave communications hanging, it's a symbol of I don't care. Sorry, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. If someone comes to you with a complaint, concern, or any type of dialogue, and there's not closure right there at that moment, the longer you wait to give that person closure, the more you're saying, I don't care. So keep that in mind. If you don't have closure, communicate that you have not forgotten. So that's where I'm going to go with that. If you cannot give that individual closure, make sure you're communicating that you're still working on it. So let's talk about some nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communications, very simply put, emails, texting, social media, and body language. I put body language at the bottom because this is kind of a fun one. But let's talk about email. So when you're communicating through email, number one suggestion I'm going to give you every time, because I have personally failed at communicating appropriately through email. I type out my message. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want to communicate, and I hit send. And then people are all of a sudden upset. And I'm like, what are you upset about? In my mind, I'm thinking, what are you upset about? And then I go back and I read the email a couple of days later, and I'm like, oh, wow. That's not exactly the way I wanted that to come across. So suggestion number one, if you're going to send an email, a directive, a communication, read it a couple of times before you send it. As a matter of fact, if it's a directive, if it's a I need you to watch out, whatever that email is, if it's something other than a social email, take time out, step away, come back, and read it. And read it in your recipient's eye. Because emails are read in whatever voice and mannerisms they want to read it in. For instance, if I got an email from James Earl Jones, in my mind, it's going to be read back to me when I read it. It's going to sound in my mind like his voice and his mannerisms. If it doesn't match, the communication might not match what James Earl Jones wanted to communicate to me. So think about that. Your intention in an email or a text might be one way, but the way it's received might be another because it's completely up to them. They don't have your body language. They don't have your voice inflections. They don't have any of that. And they're going strictly off of the words written on a page. So be careful with those types of communications. All right, let me take a second here and I'm going to back up. Elliot says here, so the question is, how do you deal with someone who seems to be more negative than positive in any given situation? Feelings are real, yes. How does one deal with an individual who shows a pattern? Well, I'm going to go back to questioning. It's all about questioning. Now, I'm not saying that the communication is a tricky thing. Now, it's one of the biggest gifts to mankind is the way that we communicate. One of the most overlooked, misused, misunderstood, and taken for granted. So to answer your question there, Elliot, effective questioning and understanding. So going back to that, someone who seems to be negative, more negative than positive in any given situation. Well, I guess we have to figure out the root cause. What is the root cause of that negativity? Is it the company? Is it something other than the company? As leaders, remember, when you step into a role as a leader, you're not just a leader from 9 to 5. You are a leader. I'll tell you a quick story about this. So in England, in the 18th century, you were given a top hat, a bolo, and different hats to wear. And that's where the term, how many hats do you wear? So if you had the big top hat, you were considered to be, quite elevated in your profession. If you had a bolo, not so much. But one thing about the English people that I found was very interesting when I was over there is when you become a leader, you're not just a leader for the company, you're a leader of the community. And I don't mean like, you're in government or anything like that, but you're viewed differently than here in the United States. In the United States, leadership is more considered a position within a corporation. In England, France, Spain, you're considered, when you get into a leadership role, it's a lifestyle. It's automatically a lifestyle. So when we talk about something like this, that when you deal with someone who's more negative than positive, then don't be afraid to step out of the corporate role and try to investigate why that person is so negative rather than positive. It could be underlying issues that are driving them to be negative. So that's one thing Pathway to Leadership wants to teach and is teaching, is that when you step into the role of leadership, you're a leadership inside and outside at all times. That's how we conduct ourselves. So there's no rules of regulations of where and where you can't go. You're a leader. Your position might stop you, but your leadership is a lifestyle. Investigate further. Find out. Let's go down. Chrissy, exactly, and you probably won't go to them again. Exactly. So going back to people that procrastinate and don't get back to you and don't follow up and follow through. Yeah, it can definitely put you in a position that you really will be hesitant to go back to them again because the last communication you had went nowhere. Uh, I definitely agree with that. Elliot, this can be tricky because some people tend to complain more than any other communication to leadership. It's tough to deal with consistent negative people no matter the situation. Again, I refer back to that. Um, we're all different walks of life. And, you know, I've had friends that grew up that the only way they got attention from their parents is through negativity. Um, and they were taught a different way of communication. So I have to refer back to that. Sometimes we have to teach, learn and teach, learn and teach. That's the pathway to leadership. Sometimes we have to teach the way to communicate. And, I would love to say that people show up in every organization and they know how to communicate to us. They just, walk up to us and they get it. But unfortunately, that's not true. They've never been given the opportunity to learn communication skills. So we have to teach that along the way. And sometimes the only way that they've ever learned to get any kind of result is through negativity. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to legitimize that right now. That can be a big challenge. Um, let's see, Scott Dennis. Words can be powerful and truly taken out of context. Yes, absolutely. That's why questioning is so important. Sometimes we ramble on, and you're in. So did you ever be? Have you ever been in that situation where you rambled on and you were like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." Hopefully, they didn't catch that. And yeah, exactly. That's exactly what that is. Chrissy, yes, so true, Scott, especially if you're reading it from a New York accent. Okay. All right. I'm gonna let that one. I'm gonna let that one go. And Elliot agreed. Learn and teach. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Social media. Social media is interesting. So, one thing I'm going to say about social media is it is everybody's alternate reality. Okay? Most people I find are completely different on social media than they are in person. It's their alternate ego. It's the no rules, no holds barred platform to really let loose and be who they want to be rather than who they really are. And I'll probably get some flack for that, and trust me, I'll take it. But what I find is the people that I know face to face seem to have a different reality when they're on social media. And when you're communicating through social media, it's a very dangerous place because there's no restrictions. And I know politically and everything like that, we're not going to get into that tonight. But where I'm going with that is you can be whoever you want on social media, and you don't have to play by any rules. All I'm going to say about social media is be very careful of where you are professionally and who you want to take you seriously when it comes to social media. It's a very dangerous place. And I want everybody that's associated with Pathway to Leadership to understand this. If you're going to engage with social media on a professional level, understand it's going to be a very difficult path to follow because there's no holds barred there. Be very guarded, and I just bid you caution when you're playing with the social media side of communication. So let's move on with body language. So, nonverbal. Think about it. If your body language doesn't match what's coming out of your mouth, or if someone is having a very intense conversation with you and your body language isn't showing attentiveness, well, then you have to watch that too. Body language is something that I'm personally learning myself because there's certain mannerisms that I do. So I'm a musician, I play piano. And one of the things that's come to my attention is that I make a certain expression when I'm playing music. I don't look very happy. So if you have a piano player that's playing music and he doesn't look very happy, as a matter of fact, his facial expression looks kind of painful, that's expressing a communication to the people that are listening to him that this guy's not really enjoying himself. So I started studying that. Well, I want to morph from that into having communications with people that are coming to us and trying to deliver a message. If our body language is communicating to them non-verbally that we're disinterested or that the conversation is painful and we're actually, maybe showing with our body language that we're in a hurry, that's a communication that's actually being received by the other person. So we have to be careful and mindful of our body language. Crossed arms. I'm going to cross my arms. Yeah, that's very comfortable for me, but it could be considered a form of communication that says, I'm closed off to whatever you're saying. What I'm going to say is, for the fact of time for this evening, I think we all should, as leaders and learning and teaching, that we should all take time out and Google and actually research and learn some body language techniques that will help us communicate effectively. I'm still learning. I don't claim to be an authority, but at this point, you really do need to look at your body language. So let's move on. So I'm going to close off tonight, and I'm going to open up the dialogue in the chat for a little while. But I do want to say this. The bottom line, when it comes to effective communication, you can say all you want. You can say all the right things. You can have a multitude of wonderful phrases and things to communicate to somebody. But communication is a two-way street. Unless there's someone on the other side willing to receive what you're saying, it is not communication. It is dancing by yourself. And I can't stress that enough. Communication has to be a two-way street, or else it's ineffective, illegitimate, and a waste of time. So think about that. When you have a message to deliver, make sure your message is going to be received. And if you're dealing with someone that's not willing to receive that message, your communication is falling on deaf ears. This is tough. These are the hard steps on the pathway to leadership. So remember, I'm going to open it up to chat. I'm going to join in the chat here for a few moments. And thank you so much for joining us on Pathway to Leadership. I really appreciate your support. I hope you subscribe, be part of the community, and hit that like button, show your love, and help promote Pathway to Leadership to others. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and kill my mic, and I'm going to monitor the chat for a few minutes. Have a great night, everybody, and I will see you next time on Pathway to Leadership.